So we are bearing a very high cost, even in pure fiscal terms, leave alone the broader macroeconomics and the human impact. So what is the bottom line? When you look at these costs, I'm afraid you are left with no other option but to ask the question, what are the benefits of the war on terror? And this is where I think we need a very strong national commitment. Many of us who have spent our lives working in Pakistan remain committed to a liberal, moderate, modern, Islamic welfare state. That is what I believe we are fighting for. So let us not be carried away by the costs. They are large. We are bearing them. They are becoming increasingly difficult to manage. We are running into a vicious cycle, as demonstrated by Asif. The war is leading to more poverty, more unemployment, especially of youth, that is feeding into militancy. We are in a vicious cycle. We have to manage it better. But the high costs do not mean that we abandon this effort. We are fighting it for the vision of Pakistan given to us by our founding fathers. Thank you very much.
We'll now open the floor for questions from the audience. Can I just request you to please state your name, the organization that you're affiliated with, and who you'd like to direct your question to. Ms. Nikhat Sattar, Ms. Ifatara, and Mr. Mohammed Sabir, please. Could you please just join in here?
Howard there thought to downsize the welfare state, and they got into power through this war of ideas. Isn't there a war of ideas here in Pakistan between what you rightfully said about a modern, progressive welfare state in Pakistan, and some ideas being promoted which are against this whole idea? How do we fight this war of ideas? I know that in, for example, Indonesia, where I was working, they have developed an effective system of trying to deal with this idea of militancy and overcoming this problem of un-Islamic way of killing somebody is achieving heaven or something like that. I mean, our whole motto is that you save the life of one person, you save the life of humanity. And if you kill a person, a single person without cause, it's like killing the whole of humanity. So how do you fight in Pakistan this war of ideas? How can we do it that you can achieve a world? And second question is, have the state institutions in Pakistan learned their lessons? Because I was working before here, I was working in Bangladesh. Yesterday in this very hotel, we attended a seminar on Balochistan. And when I first went to Balochistan, the feedback that I'm receiving from the people there is similar to what people in Bangladesh were telling me about their experience with Pakistan. So have the state institutions of this country learned their lessons? Or how can we help them learn their lessons? These are my two questions. Thank you.
The part of the problem is that, with all due respects, our state institutions have not done a good job in promoting this concept of a welfare state, a reaction on the part of the people, which has led some of them into this extremism and militancy. And in a way, the real challenge is that we have to get our act together. The state, in some ways, has fundamentally failed. The last few years, we have seen, with all due respects again, a visible decline in the quality of governance in this country. There's been far more, I would say, perception, if not hard evidence, of corruption in the system. And therefore, the desire to search for an alternative has been increased in the system. So you're absolutely right that have the state institutions performed? No, they haven't. But that doesn't mean that we give up on what we have. I think the message here is one of we have to clearly get our institutions to work better. I mean, there has been, despite everything that has gone wrong or may have gone wrong, we have had, I believe, a very important transition to democracy. And that, I believe, is going to provide the safety net against a large-scale disturbance of the kind that you're seeing somewhere else in the Islamic world. But nevertheless, our institutions are not working. And this is the real challenge. And maybe there is, in fact, the need for a very detailed follow-up of this work, which has highlighted the costs of exactly that kind of question that you have raised. And how is it that we continue to demonstrate what are the benefits of fighting this war?
The SWEEP, which is the National Diet and Staple Food with Food Support Programs at present. I doubt food insecurity is the consequence of inefficient pricing policies, causing food inflation leading towards the food insecurity. So how food crisis, security crisis comes to this leading towards the food insecurity in Pakistan? Please comment. Thank you.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mr. Deputy Chairman of Planning Commission. I believe your next term is not too far. We've been discussing this. I'm actually from Child Protection Section of UNICEF, and we've been discussing this for quite some time. That Pakistan has traditionally been a very low spender on the social sector, health, education, and social protection. And I believe this presentation has highlighted the fact that, and Dr. Pasha also resonated the fact that we need to break this vicious circle, because on one hand, these large swaths of our population which are not really mainstream government, we as a society, we're not doing anything. We had a meeting, UNICEF and IMF country director in Pakistan, and actually the idea was how to ensure that the government spending, at least in these crucial areas, this social sector, has been sort of capped or earmarked, so that, because these kind of situations which we are in, I don't think that we are going to get over this problem in near future. It will take some time. So one way of dealing with this is to, bring in further cuts in social spending, or is there anyone at the strategic level thinking that we need to ensure that the social spending, the social sector spending is a must for your, especially in health, education, and social protection. If you don't do that, then other measures alone perhaps won't work. They haven't worked in the past.
Policy Institute, SDIP. And I just want to ask that I feel like we don't have a whole picture of the cost of war and terrorism, because you just gave some costs like increase in the military, but you have not mentioned the cost of the social cost in terms of economic cost, like loss of income, loss of lives, loss of infrastructure, and things like that. And I think this doesn't give us the whole picture, and the cost of war is much more higher than you have mentioned here. So do you have any idea or some planning to address this, that how we can bring this social cost in terms of economic cost and present a whole picture in terms of monetary figures? Thank you.
On the food insecurity issue, I think the way to the poor population, it's not the affordability, the purchasing power kind of thing, because it's not like the food is not there in the system. Food is there, but of course the systems are not working very well to support, to facilitate, or to support those people who cannot afford food. So that's basically the point of insecurity. So it's not like the food is not available. The same goes to the income. I mean, then we say that 38% people are living below the poverty line. But if you see the overall national income or GDP of our country, that's not that bad, because it's again the redistribution of income. Difficult to measure, for example, loss of life. How can you measure cost of a life in rupee terms, in a monetary term? It's really difficult. But of course, the work has been done on the social costing of that. But the scope of it was not included in the scope of this report. But surely we can look into it. Thank you.
That there is compensation to the victims. bomb attacks and the damages thereof. That has been quantified. But I don't think any researcher would ever dare begin to quantify the value of human life. That is unquantifiable. Loss to property has been quantified, and it links particularly to mega events, like for instance the bomb attack even on Marriott Hotel. We have been able to quantify the costs of that damage. So there is fairly detailed work on that, except that we stop without quantifying the value of a human life. Again, we have in Pakistan, the parliament has passed a very important legislation about 5-6 years ago, which is called the Fiscal Responsibility and Debt Limitation Act. Usme, parliament, in its sovereign responsibility, had indicated certain targets for social spending. There was a time when we were meeting those targets. But in the last 2-3 years, we have stopped meeting those targets, unfortunately. And this is the kind of an issue which Parliament ought to take up and discuss priorities. That is exactly what they should be doing, for example, at budget time. The other view, which has been somewhat touched in this report, because it's still a bit early, is that bounces from about 46 or 47% to 56% initially, and next year, in fact, more. The intention of the award, presumably, and I think this is quite apparent, was that since the provincial governments are primarily responsible for the delivery of social services, that transferring a higher share of public resources to the provinces would, in a sense, lead to higher priority for social spending. It's too early to see whether that's happening, because unfortunately this year we have run into a huge problem that much of the gains of LFC have been neutralized by the lack of growth in revenues. But it is a structural change, and hopefully, over time, we'll begin to see the positive effects of the NFC award.
The whole team of SPDC is taking the initiative and conducted a gigantic task on this crisis, security especially. In the conclusion, when I see addition of civilian search strategies, would you like to share my Honorable Satajadi and Hafiz Pasha, especially? When the government, when the political parties, when even the representatives of those particular areas are unable to go there, what sort of strategy would you like to suggest to overcome this problem, please? Thank you very much.
Please, question of cost of human life. I believe cost-benefit analysis arose out of the average cost of killing a Vietnam. So this has been happening. And another point of information, the expenditure on health in 2009-10 was 0.7% of GDP, and on education 1.7. So you can see where do we stand vis-a-vis the law that
4.5 would be added.
the law that you mentioned should have been doubled
Yes.
by now.
Yes.
I was also struck by information provided in the presentation that Punjab, I didn't believe so, but I have to now, is mainly